Buddy, welcome back to another episode of Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru on iTunes, on Stitcher. We have the students, we have a live audience today. You listen to podcasts? Yeah? Okay. We're on there. Random Musings from Clinical Trials Guru. Different content than YouTube. Sometimes it's the same, but usually it's different. Right? Just because I think that's more people are going to start using podcasts in the future, and I want to be on there. All right, so Chris, everyone's listening. I'm interviewing Chris, my business partner. We're also on the Instagram Live right now. So I'm interviewing my business partner, Chris Sauber, and one of the students actually brought it up. They said, why don't you do like a one video where, 30, 40 minutes on site owner, sort of like a site owner tutorial, site owner academy, crash course in how to open your own research clinic. And Chris, we take these calls literally every day and never record them, right? So
absolutely,
we've probably given this talk like hundreds of times, but we'll do it again for everyone on YouTube, for everyone on iTunes. So let me start with this. The biggest misconception is people think they need a lot of money, and people think they need a lot of licenses to start a research site. Mm-hmm. And that's actually not true. What you need a lot of is patience. And would you like to expand on that thought, Chris?
Well, certainly patience in regards to revenue. And Dan, I'm getting feedback from your end. I'm getting echo on your end.
Oh, you are? How about now? Better?
Much better.
Okay.
So, patience in regards to revenue, because best case scenario, you start a site, best case scenario, 6 months until you see revenue. More likely longer. You get a study, once you're given a study, you're still months away from maybe enrolling your first patient, and then once you enroll your first patient, you're months away until you get paid for that patient. So best case scenario, 6 months. And that's if you get a study on your first day you open the doors. So patience definitely required.
So I always tell whoever I'm talking to, the absolute first thing you need is you need to find a principal investigator. All right? This is going to be a physician, either an MD or a DO. And yes, I've had people leave comments on YouTube that you don't always need to be an MD or a DO to be a PI. I get it. But for the most part, you do. Right? Like 90% of trials, you need to be an MD or a DO to be a PI, right?
I would think it's higher than that, but sure.
Well, some people are actually arguing on YouTube about that.
You can be You could be a high school dropout and be a PI, but who's going to give you a study?
Right.
The FDA doesn't mandate.
Correct. So the first thing you need is a PI. We just had a talk with someone yesterday. He said, should I get an LLC? What do I do? I said, look, you need to get a PI. Then you need to get a study. So those are the two things you need. You also need a CLIA waiver. Most physicians' offices, if they draw blood, they will either already have a CLIA certificate, but if they don't, you just need a CLIA waiver, okay? And it needs to be in the name of your LLC. So I would recommend you start a LLC or a S corp.
But that's not a necessity. That's not a necessity because you can run under your Social Security number. They just need a payee. Though that's not a good business decision.
Correct. It's not recommended, but if you just want to get started and speed is important and you just want to do a proof of concept to see if you can actually get a study, you can just file for a DBA, a fictitious business name, in your county. And now you're operating under your Social Security number, but with that name. So if I wanted to do a DBA for the CRA Academy, which, by the way, I already did, so you can try, but you won't be able to get it. The CRA Academy DBA, that's under our DSCS name, but you can do it under your own name. Like Bioden, you can start your own Brooklyn Clinical Trials DBA under your name, right? Now, if someone sues you, you're liable, right? Because they can come after your assets. If you set up a LLC or a S corp, as long as you don't pierce the corporate veil, which I don't want to really get into right now, but you guys can Google it. Anyone that sues your company, your assets, your personal assets are protected, right? So, yes, eventually, if you're going to do this over a long period of time, you need to get LLC, S corp. It's foolish not to, but if you just want to start to see how easy it is or how difficult it is to get a study from clinicaltrials.gov, which is step 2, after you find your PI, you need a study. Right?
Well, you need one other thing besides CLIA waiver. You need a business license.
Okay, business license. There you go.
Easy to get, though.
And the CLIA waiver is easy to get also.
Well, the paperwork's a little cumbersome, but outside of that, yeah.
And it's relatively inexpensive, right? Like $200?
Depending on what the state charges. Here in California, I believe the state's 113 and the federal's 100, I believe. So 213 total.
Okay. All right, so it's really not much that you need. Now, on my blog, The Clinical Trials Guru, I have a list of all the equipment that you need in your site with links to where to buy them on Amazon. And Chris, you did the math on all the equipment you need. I'll just read through it. Steel cabinet for drug storage, a blood draw chair, an ECG machine, even though sometimes they're provided, a centrifuge, a conference table with 6 chairs, waiting room chairs, thermometer, exam table, scale, blood pressure cuff, printer, stethoscope, -20 freezer, ECG cart, writing table for coordinators, phones, locking fridge. That turns out to be like right around $6,000, right? For everything.
6, 7, somewhere in there, yeah.
So that's it. That's really all you need. And guess what? If you partner with a physician, he or she may already have half of these things.
Or more. For
in
most
their
of
office.
it. Yeah.
Right. So you don't even need to buy all these things. Chances are your physician, if they have a private practice, has most maybe of these things. Right? So then it's just a matter of how do you negotiate with him or her to partner together. Like what's fair. They're paying the rent, so you're going to occupy some space for research. Do you contribute to the rent, or do they prefer that you pay them extra for their percentage of being your partner? So those are things those are all variables, and there's no rules to any of this stuff. Like one of the things I told one of our potential clients, she was a CRA that wants to quit her job and open a site. Not surprisingly, many do. She wanted like a blueprint for how to open a site. Like, what are the rules? And I said, I hate to break it to you. I know you come from a world where it's all rules. Like everything has to be GCP, ICH. And when you start a business, there are no rules. The only rules are you have to have a business license, you have to have a CLIA waiver certificate, your PI has to follow good clinical practice. Like that's it. Those are the rules. How much you pay your PI is totally up to you guys. What you agree on. Is he going to be a W-2 employee of yours, an independent contractor, equity partner? There's so many different ways, a combination of the three. There's so many different ways to do this. There's no rules, right? And also getting studies, because once you get your PI, now you need to get studies for that PI. So clinicaltrials.gov, free, say that again, Chris.
FREE.
Free. People don't get this. So we will gladly do this for you. We charge $1,000 a month. We get studies for clients constant. We have a team of people do nothing all day. They're probably done now because it's 7:30 at night. But from 9 to 5, they're emailing people from clinicaltrials.gov, from our own database, from drugdev.org, from all the CROs we know to get studies for you guys. Right? $1,000 a month. We also do the feasibility surveys that come for you guys. So that's the time-consuming work. Applying for the studies is you send an email or a phone call, then they will send you a CDA. And then once you get that back to them, they will send you a feasibility survey. And many new people, many new sites, they don't know how to fill these out. So we do that for you. Okay, and then we do your source documents for you. We'll negotiate your contracts and budgets. So all that for $1,000 a month, right? But you can do it all for yourself. ClinicalTrials.gov. You can literally go like I did back in 08, 09. I would pick one day every week and just do nothing but email people on clinicaltrials.gov. And it works. You get studies. It's just very time consuming. And economies of scale allows people to pay us $1,000 a month to do that for them so that they can do it.
I recall you had a certain terminology for that task. What
Economies of scale?
No. When you would look at clinicaltrials.gov.
Oh, dialing for dollars?
There you go.
Yeah, that's when I would call. These days, people get angry when you call, so you just email.
Right.
And you Facebook stalk or LinkedIn stalk.
I like that term, dialing for dollars.
Dialing for dollars, yeah. It's old school, though. No one calls anymore.
Sure.
So that's how you get studies, all right? Now, let's assume you get your first study. Well, you got to get a site selection visit. If it's your first study, you need to really put on a good show. You need to convince that CRA why should they accept you, why should they choose you and put their name on the line by recommending you when you've never done a study before. You got to be a salesperson at this point. Why? Well, maybe your PI has a lot of patients in the database. Maybe you're a former CRA and you don't have site owner experience, but you certainly have clinical research experience, and you're not going to drop the ball. You know GCP better than your own monitor does. Maybe.
I mean, not to go off on a tangent real quick, Dan.
Yeah.
But I'm going to.
That's
so
right.
Do you think the CRAs are actually putting their name on the line by recommending a site?
Yeah, I think it's possible.
Because this topic came up in our CRA Academy earlier tonight, remember?
Right.
Or you may have not been listening.
Well, in our interview with Brenda, she would say yes and no to that question.
Because ultimately, it's the sponsor or CRO's decision.
Yeah, but if they want to use it against you, they can.
Sure.
So that's why I would say yes. Yes and
okay.
Yes and no.
Right. Okay.
Right. So then the SSV. So you got to convince them. Find out why they should. I mean, you need to be confident in your own abilities. So either it's your PI has a lot of patients, or you have a lot of experience in research, or what are some other things, Chris? I mean, at the end of the day, they want you to get patients in the study. That's what they want.
Just to
data from you.
Right. Just to expand on what you're stating here, what is the by far most important topic in getting a study? What is the most important message you need to convey in order to get a study?
Enroll patients and clean data.
But don't you think patients having access to the patient population for the study is by far the most important aspect? I think it's a distant two on clean data.
Yeah. Okay, I agree.
I mean, even think of the conversation we had with Brenda about this topic.
Right. Yeah,
she says she's known of a number of sites that are just really difficult to work with, but because they're always top enrollers, the sponsor can care less.
Go on the podcast and listen to that one a few episodes ago on iTunes or Android. Yep. We interviewed Brenda on, what was the topic? Like why CRAs choose sites for future studies.
Or how do CRAs help, or I don't remember what you titled it, but it was about CRAs and what role they play in a site getting future trials.
Yeah, it goes in depth on this topic. So that's good, Chris. Thank you for taking me off tangent.
Okay.
So get a study, get a SSV, site selection visit. Here's what you have. I got good news for you guys and anyone listening. If you already have a site selection visit scheduled, you pretty much have the study already. They're spending a lot of money to get the CRA there.
Yes. Yep.
It's basically your study to lose at that point. So unless you do something stupid, or your PI does something stupid, which does happen, you're gonna get that study. Unless they show up and your office is in a closet somewhere. And you
So between all of our sites, we've probably had a couple hundred site selection visits.
yeah.
And I can only recall not getting maybe a half dozen trials out of that.
Right. So it's pretty much your study. If they do the SSV, you're good. Most people are naturally going to be nervous because it's their first one. We have CRAs that have been CRAs for 10 years that open their site and are nervous like a kid on their first day of school for their first site selection visit. And I told them, I said, hey, how many of these have you done?
Yeah, they know exactly how it works.
And they said, yeah, I've done them a lot, but now I'm on the other side. I said, well, it's no different. You're just on the other side now. And so, but you still get nervous. So if you've never done this before, of course you're going to be nervous. But to relieve some of your anxiety, you're going to probably get the study unless you screw up really badly. Right? Which
that's not the only reason, because Breakthrough, one of our sites, Dan.
Yes, I know.
Up until recent, yes, I would hope you would know. Up until recently, for the first 7 years of operation, there was only 2 times in which there was a site selection visit and the site didn't get the study. But recently there was 2 site selection visits and the site didn't get the study. But that was because the indication was way out of the PI's specialty range. The CRA or the sponsor just didn't do enough investigating to see that the doctor was, her specialty was X, and they were looking for somebody in Z or A or specialty wise. So I'm sure that's why we didn't get the trial.
Okay.
But I think that's another reason why you may not get the study.
Right. So let's say you got the study now, right? Well, now everyone thinks that they're, in the clear, and this is where the patience comes in. Because think about it, you haven't spent much money up until this point. Hopefully, you're using a office space of your PI, so there's no rent potentially. Equipment, hopefully you're using your PI's equipment. Minimal expenses, right? A CLIA waiver, LLC. You're on a shoestring right now. Like, you're bootstrapping this.
And hopefully you're the coordinator.
Yeah. Now, the issue is you need to have patience because there's no money coming in. You're probably working a job somewhere. So now the real work's going to start. Let's say you get the study. Now you got to create your source docs. You got to make sure everyone's trained on the protocol. Your coordinators, are you going to be the coordinator? Are you going to hire a coordinator? I recommend you be the coordinator if you can. If you can afford one, hire a good one. But if you can't, don't compromise and hire a bad one. I'd rather you do it yourself and pay yourself that money. Right? That's the mistake most people make. They're like, well, I can't afford a good coordinator, so I'm going to hire a slightly below average one. No, it's better you do it yourself at that point. Right? But sometimes that's not an option. If you're a CRA and you're making a good salary, you can't just quit your job. Right? So you got to figure that part out, right? Who's going to actually do the coordinating? The PI is not going to do it. So someone has to do it. And it's going to have to be you if you're the business owner, or you need to hire a good coordinator. A good coordinator will cost you $60,000 a year on average, if not more. Is that correct, Chris?
I'd say it depends on location. I would say 45 or above.
45 or above. Now, if there is room to give a really good coordinator, you find a really good one, you can give them equity in your company, a percentage of your company. Then you don't have to pay them anything. They just get a percentage of the profits.
Or a whole lot less.
Or less salary and, less profits. Right? There's no rules. Again, there's no rules. Anything goes. What you can negotiate. So now the patience comes in, right? Because SIV as you guys may or may not know, site initiation visit. You guys know, the students know here, but people listening may not know that you can't screen until they do a site initiation visit. That's not a site selection visit. It's a site initiation visit. They're making sure you have all the drug, all the lab kits. Everyone's been trained on the study. Everyone has all their passwords to the multiple vendors that you're going to use for the study. Make sure you have your source docs in order. Make sure your regulatory documents are in order. All that stuff. Well, guess what? Someone has to do all that work. That's, again, going to be either you or the coordinator. Now, let's say you go through the SIV, site initiation visit. Well, now you can start screening patients.
So long as you were given clearance.
As long as you're giving clearance. And what you are going to do is you're going to screen more than you thought you needed, because you're going to learn that the study's probably harder than you thought, and your screen fails are going to be more than you thought. And you don't really get paid for screen failures.
Well, you do, but
to keep it simple, you do, but you don't. So they will give you a ratio of screen failures per randomizations.
well,
Depending on how complicated the study is.
yeah. I mean, there's a wide variance there. I mean, some sponsors pay all screen fails.
Mm-hmm.
Some pay all screen fails after one randomization. Some pay 2 to 1, so 2 screen failures to 1 randomization, or vice versa. 1 screen fail to 2 randomizations. There's a wide variance there.
Wide variance. But the point is, the bottom line is, you want to try to avoid screen failures. Because even if you get paid for all of them, it's still, if you're not randomizing anyone, the sponsor is not going to pay for that forever.
And not only that, but just to elaborate on what you were saying about they do, but they don't pay screen fails. So most often sponsors, well, I wouldn't say most often. I'd say 50% of the time, you're not going to get paid on a screen failure until you randomize the subject, even if they pay all screen failures. Or they're not going to pay screen failures until the study is over, all of them. So you may have 100 screen failures, not going to pay a dime for that until the study is over.
Right.
So it's 50-50 on that.
Mm-hmm.
50 don't pay until the end, 50 don't pay until a randomization.
Right. So, okay. So now you're screening patients, right? And remember now, this could be, since we started the LLC until this point, it may be 3 or 4 months have gone by already, right? That's like a quarter of a year. And no money. Matter of fact, you're spending. So, so far, not good, right? You need patience. But this is normal, but it's still not good. You're not making money. You're losing money. So you need to start screening. You need to start randomizing. Now the monitors will come in. Once you start randomizing patients, the monitor will come to your site and do source data verification. That will trigger a payment, but it takes 30 to 60 days to get that payment. And that's if your queries are
best case.
Best case. It might take longer.
Some contracts, they pay quarterly or yearly. That's after randomization.
Yeah, I would never accept a yearly payment. I have heard of quarterly.
I'm sorry, semi-yearly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean yearly. Semi-yearly.
Yeah, and if the contract says quarterly, you're pretty much not going to get paid for until 6 months out. Because when they say monthly, it's really quarterly. From my experiences. Because a lot of variables go into it. Like the monitor has to source data, verify the data. There's always queries. The coordinator has to answer the queries. Then the monitor has to confirm those queries. So that's like weeks, right? And then a payment can be triggered. So 3 months after your visit, you'll get a payment. Ballpark number, right?
So, and just to elaborate here, it's not that the sponsor is not going to pay you. You will get paid. There's only a few instances that I am aware of in which sponsors did not pay, and they went broke. They went out of business. Unfortunately, they were conducting a research trial and went out of business. Obviously, it happens, and those sites didn't get paid. But that's a very, very much a rarity. So you will get paid. It's slow.
Right, and I have a video on how to negotiate budget. Actually, we have a lot of videos on how to negotiate budgets with Chris on a lot of them. And so just go to YouTube. They're there. But that's pretty much like what you need to know, like the bare minimum about how to start a site. And then you need to make sure that you keep the studies that you get. So, and then take it a step further, make sure that you're getting repeat business from these sponsors. So do a good job for them, and they're always going to give you more studies. The CRO, the sponsor, do a bad job for them, you're never going to hear from them again. Right? So that becomes the next challenge. Is, don't celebrate just because you got a study. Well, make sure your data is clean. Make sure your coordinators are well trained. Make sure your PI has oversight. And that responsibility really comes down to the site owner. I mean, you can blame the PI, you can blame whoever you want. If the PI is a site owner, you have a justified reason to blame them. But if they're just an employee or a contractor of yours, it's your fault. You're the owner. Like the buck stops with you.
But to elaborate on what you're stating there, Dan, the PI will be the one to get blamed.
The PI will be the one to get blamed, but if your business fails, you're the one to blame.
Oh, absolutely. But when it comes to the study, the PI is the ultimate authority, and they get blamed for everything.
They do.
And the sponsor.
Furthermore, if the PI is probably going to be research naive, so he or she's not going to really know what to expect, and they're trusting you to make sure this is a smooth experience for them. Yep. So if the monitors start scaring them at their visits about the FDA and about you guys are committing so many protocol deviations, the PI is going to quit. So you may be out of business, and not because the sponsor took the study away, but because your PI quit. So there's a lot of ways you can screw this up. So the immediate challenge is get a study. The long-term challenge is maintain quality and focus on the long term, right? And also be able to pay your bills in the short term. And at some point, if you have a full-time job as a CRA, you're going to have to quit your job and commit to this full-time. Or just hire a really good coordinator and a site manager. And then you can continue your CRA job, right?
Yeah.
And outsource all the biz dev to us, to DSCS.
There you go.
We'll take care of it all for you.
And we will help make sure, or at least what we can do in regards to limiting your screwing up.
Yeah, our biggest growing client base is CRAs that are continuing to be CRAs, but they want to diversify into owning their own business. They make good money, so money's not an issue. So they hire really good staff. They hire a site director. Sometimes they're the director. They do some QA when they can. And then they outsource all the biz dev contracts to us. And so that's $1,000 a month. That's it. So that's nothing. So there is a way you can do this without quitting your job, but you have to pay for it. You can't have both. Can't save money, right? Or do it yourself. Like, you need to pick one or the other. So anything else, Chris? Anything else you want to add?
Well, I'm sure we didn't cover it all, but I can't think of anything to add at the moment.
And we're actually thinking of doing a site owner academy, much like our CRA academy, but obviously for people that want to start their own sites. And so stay tuned for details on that. But with what we just told you now, I mean, that should be enough to at least get you started.
Yeah, if you have more questions, always reach out to Dan, and we'll set up a teleconference.
And we have a live audience in here, so you guys have questions? Because probably your questions are what other people listening are thinking, but because Chris and I have been doing this so long, we kind of lost touch with what kind of questions inexperienced people have. So what questions do you have any?
Mine would still be on the financing. We spoke about equipment, $7,000.
$7,000 for equipment, yes.
Yes, but I'm thinking, what would be a good budget to start running the business before you actually start getting paid?
Chris, did you hear that? What would be a good, how much cash should you have on hand operating expenses? We always tell people, be prepared to go 6 months without any income.
I would So not to cut you off, Dan, but the number one reason a business fails is lack of resources. So they run out of money. 80% of all businesses, new businesses, fail in the first 2 years. And then the primary reason for that is they ran out of money. So I would say if you want to be conservative and safe, I would say have enough money to cover expenses for a year. Now, your expenses vary, right? Are you paying rent? Are you paying the miscellaneous expenses that go along with rent, paying for air conditioning or heating, internet, phone, all of that? If so, well, you need more money. Do you need to be able to pay your bills, or do you have a significant other that can pay the bills while you're starting your business? So there's a lot of variables there. But I would say to be conservative and safe, you need a year of funds to get you through that year. A year of funding.
Yeah, Chris is very conservative. I'm more, what's the word?
Liberal?
Yeah. Sure.
Not in terms politically, not politically necessarily, but
Yeah,
financially.
politically, I'm a registered independent. Thank you very much.
Right. I'm just, we both know this of each other. You're more liberal with money.
I'm more willing to risk. Chris is more conservative. I say 6 months. He says 12 months. So do 9 months. Enough time to have a baby. Enough time to start a clinic. Right?
Yeah, right.
That's a good rule of thumb. So remember, 9 months of no income. If you're the coordinator, that means you're working for free for 9 months. If you're paying someone because you have a job, that's 9 months of expenses. Either way, you need money, right?
Yep.
Anything else? Any more questions? Bioden has one. Hold on, Chris.
Okay.
Oh, good question. How many studies do you think can sustain you for a 12-month period? How many studies do you need? I have my own answer to this. I'll let Chris go first. How many studies do you need to make a decent living for yourself? Right?
Well, again, large variance there. You get the right study, one study. One study can sustain you for more than a year. The right study.
We have 2 studies here at Global Clinical Trials. We have more than 2. We have 2 that I can think of that if all hell broke loose, all the employees quit, our consulting, our CRA thing, everything, our CRO closed down, I can live 6-figure lifestyle with either one of those 2 studies, doing all the work and just having the PI do what they need to do, right?
Well, we had a study.
And they're not even that great budgets. They're like average budgets. Now, would I be okay with that? In California, you're kind of broke making $100,000 a year, but in another state, it's not bad. And I know in New York, it's like right? It's like borderline being broke almost. But in some places, yeah, almost. I mean, not quite, but I mean, you can have a really good lifestyle with one study, because on average, go ahead.
They just released a study for Orange County. If you make less than $80,000 a year, it's comparable to living in poverty elsewhere.
Wow. Yeah, that's depressing.
Yeah.
On average, a ballpark, and this is just ballpark figures. One study for average enrollment, not crazy enrollment, just average enrollment, will gross you $100,000 a year for that study. So if you have no other expenses except you pay the PI a percentage, right? You make $100K off of one study, pay the PI 20%. You're making $80,000 a year, right? Now you're gonna owe like half of that in taxes, but so then you have like $40,000 after taxes. So you're gonna need like 3 or 4 studies to be doing well, right?
2. If it's your scenario, 2 you're making 6 figures at 2.
Sure.
But you've had there was a study at one of your former clinics. I won't name the sponsor, but I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about. I'm sure there was $1 million in revenue at that study.
Yes.
If you had that study, right? And we have a study at our current site at Breakthrough, all comparable to that. It was close to $1 million in revenue.
Yeah.
You have a study like that, one study.
And you would need some assistance for that, like hire a research assistant, someone to help you out, pay them, $15 to $20 an hour, depending on what they do. Yeah, you can make like 7 figures a year off of that if you do it the right way. So research has different budgets, obviously. On average, $100K a year per study. Sometimes every 5 years, you come across a study that is a multiple 7-figure budget, and your goal is to get as many of those as you can, and in between them, and maximize them when you have them. And in between, make sure you still stay in business by taking these smaller studies. That's the strategy. Now, if you're a huge clinic, obviously the strategy is something else. Like you're trying to get acquired by a CRO or an SMO, that's different. But if you're just a sole clinic, just want to make a nice living, wait for those big budget studies, and then take these smaller studies in between and try to stay in business.
Yeah, those big budget studies, those really nice budget, those studies where you can get a lot of patients, those are few and far between, unfortunately. They come every 2, 3, 4 years.
Yep.
It seems.
Yep. Anything else?
Not for me.
Good. Well,
any other questions from our audience?
Let's see on Instagram. Somebody's on there. Oh, someone on Instagram wants $1 million study.
Well, so do I.
Yeah, me too. Where do I go? What do I have to do to get that? Clinicaltrials.gov. Really?
Yeah, but that's not. Unfortunately, when you go to clinicaltrials.gov, it doesn't tell you what the study's going to pay.
Exactly. Actually, as we wrap up, let's end with that. Clinicaltrials.gov is designed. It's not designed for us, as much as I wish it was. It's not designed for us to go in there and do business development. It's designed for patients looking for studies or doctors looking for studies for their patients to find studies. So it's built for patients, but you can use it as a business development tool when you go in. So it's not meant for you to do business development and networking. It's meant for patients to find studies. But the workaround is you can use it as a business development tool.
Yep.
All right. And anything else, Chris?
No, I think it's a pretty good podcast.
Somebody said vaccine trials all day long. So that's actually something Chris and I have not gotten into. But let's talk after. Hit me up on the DM. This on Instagram, and let's see if we can barter, exchange some studies. Vaccine trials, Chris.
Yeah,
I know about vaccine trials.
So I've talked to a couple. You remember that those couple of guys from Texas that were looking to acquire South Coast?
Yes. Oh,
that's what they did was vaccine trials, and they said they can enroll 200, 300, 400 patients in those trials. Now, I don't know what they pay. I imagine since the work is relatively light, I imagine a patient visit's not $1,000. It's probably $500. But still, you're enrolling 200 patients at $500 a visit, and there's say 4 visits.
They're actually on here. They're on here. How much is a vaccine trial per patient pay?
Completed patient.
Yeah, ballpark. Completed patient. We'll find out. But yeah, I do remember that. Those are studies you make up for in volume. Interestingly enough, Chris and I have been spending most of our careers doing the psychiatric trials, which are the opposite of that. It's low volume, high pay. Vaccine trials are low pay, high volume.
Right.
But it should be easy to recruit for. He says $600 to $700 a visit for a vaccine trial. That's pretty good.
How many visits on average for a vaccine trial? I would guess 3 or 4.
We need to get some vaccine trials.
Ask this person.
3 to 5 visits, they say.
3 to 5. Okay, so I was close. 3 to 4, 3 to 5.
Yeah, hit me up. Let's barter. Let's exchange studies. Okay. I love social media.
No, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for watching on the live stream. Thank you for listening on podcast, Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru, and on YouTube. And I appreciate it. Stay tuned. And thank you to the students for staying really late today. It's 8 p.m. We had a long day of interning at the clinic, and now they're learning how to run a site because they're awesome. That's why. All right. Thank you all for listening and watching, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.